The topic for today's discussion is code formatting. Now, irrespective of if you are a developer or a QA, if you have worked in any project for any considerable amount of time, I hope you will agree with me that having a common code formatting is not only desirable but becomes absolute necessity. Why? Well, let's look at it by thinking that what happens if you do not have a well-formatted code in your project? Well, an ill-formatted code not only looks ugly, it affects readability, and whatever affects readability also affects maintainability of code, right? So for that reason enough, you should have well-formatted code in your project. Also because when you're creating, new pull requests, what you want to do is like you want to focus on finding design issues, logical issues with the code, and you do not want to focus on finding formatting issues in your code. So also for that reason, having a well-formatted code is very important. And like all in all, when you have a well-formatted code, it doesn't look like a wall, which is painted by 5 different people in 5 different colors. It looks consistent, it looks nice, and it's just nice to look at. So that's why we need code formatting. Now, with the why out of the window, let's look at implementation details. So there are like multiple ways in which, you can achieve code formatting. Like you can have solutions which are on your local machines by putting some files like editor config, having some plugins. But then you can also do formatting on the cloud side, like for example in tools like GitHub. And in this video, I'm going to cover how you can do formatting automatically without doing anything from your end to format code on GitHub so that code never really goes unformatted, once it gets merged into the main branch. But then I will also tell you like what are the pros and cons of it so that you can decide for yourself if that's the solution you really want to go for, right? So without any further delays, let's just first try to create a project, like a bare bones project where we can have some unformatted code and which we can push to GitHub and we can see, how formatting works over there. So let's first go to GitHub and I will first try to create a very bare bones repository, and let's call it as bad code, right? And we'll say this repo will contain some very ill-formatted code, right? And we'll keep it public. We'll add a README file and nothing else. Let's create a repository. Okay, now we have a repository which is very bare bones, and I'm going to copy the URL. Let's open terminal and let's zoom in a little bit. Clear screen. Let's change directory to my D drive, which is the place where I keep all my projects, and let's clone this repository. Okay, so the repository is now cloned, and now what we can do is we can open it via IntelliJ. So I will go and do Windows 1, and then I will say file, open, not new, file, open, and we should have bad code here. So let's open it, this window. And at this moment, this is like a very bare bones project. As you can see, the only thing it contains is a README file. So let's add a framework to it. So I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to add framework support to this project. And we're going to add a Maven project. So I'll check on Maven, click on OK. And at this moment, I'm not going to add it yet because I still want to do a few more things over here. So let's change the group ID. I'll make it to my company name, which is Power Tester. Artifact name remains bad code, version is fine, compiler version is 11, everything looks okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load Maven dependencies. And let's open terminal, let's go to source. And at this moment, everything is pretty empty, right? It just added a structure with source, main, and test directories to our project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new package and let's call it as bad code. Maybe that's the name of the package, and we're going to add a new Java class which we will call as poorly formatted class, right? And in this class, now let's add a method which could be public static void main, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to print a statement which says this is a poorly formatted class, right? And if you want to add another method, well, we can do that too. Alt insert. Maybe we want to create a toString method, right? So let's create a toString method. Let me zoom in a little bit so that it becomes more readable for you guys to see. And here again, we can have a print statement which says poorly formatted toString method, right? At this moment, everything is well formatted because IntelliJ is formatting it well for me. So let's change that and let's make it poorly formatted. So typically in a project, what will happen is, people will forget to give a space in between here, which is typically what I do. Many times I forget to give space over here. What they might also do is some people will like to have a curly bracket like this. Some people will like a curly bracket like this. Right? Typically, these are the inconsistencies and formatting errors that you will see in a project. But because this exercise is all about formatting, let's let's make it a very poorly formatted class. So let's put this, not like this. Let's put everything on a different line, which is not how it is ever going to be. But hey, we're just going to, we're just making it very poorly formatted. So no problem with it. It is still a valid code, but just poorly formatted, right? So what am I going to do? I am going to, let's say, I can create a branch out of it, or maybe I can directly push to, to the main branch. Now, typically in a project, you will never push code directly to the main branch, but because, well, this is just for demonstration purposes, let's just go ahead and maybe let's just create a pull request, right? So let me first do a git branch, and let me create a git checkout branch, and I can say added Maven support, right? So I'm creating a branch here, and I'm adding Maven support here. And with this poorly formatted code, I'm going to, let's say, open Visual Studio Code. And at this moment, I see, so let's open the project node 0. Let's open that code. And let's do a bunch of other things. If I go to files that are changed, we see a bunch of files here. Like POM is a file which I'm interested in, but everything that is coming from .idea repository, I'm not interested in that file, right? So let's just go back and add a git ignore file. So let's add a ignore file, and the file that we're interested in is a git ignore file. Let's look for a template for Java, and I'm going to generate a file, and let's ignore .idea files, right? So I'm going to ignore .idea files. Let's go back, and as you can see, now we have a class which is what we're interested in committing. We have a POM file which we're interested in committing, and we have a git ignore file which is what we're interested in committing. So at this moment, I'm just going to write one message which is initial commit, adding framework support, a Java class, and a git ignore file, right? Typically, you might even have 3 different commits for these 3 different things, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So let's keep it like this. And if I open terminal, I can even push my code from here. So let's just do a git push, and let's create a branch. Git push. Let's create a branch. Where is it? Let's create a pull request, right? And let's open Windows 2. This is where we have our branch, create pull request. And at this moment, I'm just going to go ahead and, merge this pull request, confirm. And let's go and look at the ill-formatted code that we have pushed to GitHub. And if we go here, we see this poorly formatted class. And as you can see, it's pretty poorly formatted, right? The public class poorly formatted, exactly how we pushed it. So now let's just go ahead and change this, and let's add a mechanism so that never any ill-formatted code makes it to our main branch, right? So let's just go ahead and look into GitHub Marketplace Actions, and I think I've already searched it here. So let's click on this. Let's click on GitHub Marketplace Actions, and what I'm going to look for is a action which can format. So format Java code, submit. And as we can see, we have two actions here. One is prettier Java format action, which does not seem to have multiple stars. And then you have something called Google Java format, which automatically formats Java files using Google Java style. So this seems to have 79 stars. Let's open it. I will not go into too much details of this plugin, but if you just like read the initial summary, what it says is it automatically formats the Java files using Google Java style guidelines, which is what is specified here. And I will add a link of this particular plugin in the description so that you can go and read about it more. And then it says this action automatically downloads the latest release of Google Java format program. So these are the guidelines, and what Google has done is in this repository, Google Java format, they have created this program, which is basically a jar file, which will format your code as per these guidelines, which are mentioned over here, right? And if you look into examples, they have given an example here which says, if you use this example, it will format all Java files in the repository and commit the changes. And then you have another example which only checks if the formatting is correct without pushing anything to the main branch. And this will just print the diff of every incorrectly formatted line and fail if there is any errors. And then it is also telling you like all the different inputs that are available for this particular plugin, GitHub token, version, files, etc., etc. And to see a full list of arguments, you can go through the plugin, and then you can see what all is possible or not possible using this particular plugin. So for our use case, since we're interested to format the files, let's just copy this particular plugin and let's go back to our project. Let's go to actions. And let's create a new action, which could be a set up a workflow yourself. And here we are going to copy this plugin. Let's just go ahead and look at what this plugin, how this plugin is designed. So it says the name of the plugin is format it on push to branch master. Now we know that our branch is not master, it's called main. So let's change this to main branch. In jobs, you only have one job, which is formatting job. It runs on Ubuntu machine, and the first thing that it does is checks out your project, right? And then the second thing that it does, it uses this particular action to format the code. And it might seem like that it's only formatting the code, but it's actually doing two things over here. Not only it is going to format your checked out code, it is also going to, let's say if I search for it, commit. It is also going to commit your code, so skip commit. By default it is false, right? So it does not skip commit, it tries to commit your code also to your main branch, right? So this is skip commit. By default it is false, it means does not skip commit, so commit to the main branch. And if you come back here, so it is doing two things. It will format the code and it will push that code to your main branch. And then you can have some arguments. If you want to skip sorting imports, you can pass this argument. But hey, I don't want to skip anything. I want to make use of the full power of Google Java format library. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also comment these arguments, and I really want to basically use the full power of this plugin. So with this, I'm going to call it as Java format, right? Because and YAML, Java format YAML, right? Commit changes, create Java format YAML, commit directly to the main branch. So I'm going to commit it. So let's just go back to our project and try to make it a little bit more unformatted. It is already pretty unformatted, but why not make it more unformatted, right? Let's also remove the one line gap that we have between the methods that makes it pretty badly formatted. So let's go ahead and create a git checkout branch, and I'll say more badly formatted code, right? And let's go back to VS Code, and I'm also going to commit this. More poor formatting done. More poor formatting done. And let's commit this, and let's also push this change to a branch. So there is no upstream branch yet, it's a new branch. So we are going to create the branch. We're going to push the branch, and now we're also going to create a pull request. So more poor formatting done, create pull request. So at this moment, if you go into actions, the plugin was saying that it had some, it was complaining about certain things. And let's see what it was complaining about. It was saying it could download Java format, but on committing changes, it is saying, hey, one file was changed, permissions denied to GitHub Actions. So it got an authentication error. It was not able to push stuff directly to GitHub, and we can change that. So let's go back to settings, and I think if we go to actions, probably general, I think if we change the workflow permissions from read repository contained to read and write permissions, we can now push code directly, right? So let's just go back, and at this moment let it be failed, and let's go ahead and go back to our pull request, and let's merge the code to main branch, because it's more poorly formatted code. And this should trigger the action again, because what we have done is we have done a push to main branch. And if we click on this, the workflow says that every time something is pushed to the main branch, trigger the workflow, right? So if you go back, now it says, hey, it was green. It was able to push the code to a main branch. So let's just go back and look into the main branch. Your main branch protected, no problem. We will have a look at this later. Let's look at the bad code. And as you can see, even though we tried to make it very poorly formatted, now everything is in one line. We have that extra line in between these two methods, and all the formatting is now proper, right? So looks pretty awesome, right? Like, you don't have to do anything at your end to format the code. And it seems like even if 5, 10, or 100 people are trying to push poorly formatted code, mostly unintentionally, this plugin will always make sure that the code is properly formatted. So let's just go ahead and do one more thing. It says your main branch isn't protected, so let's go ahead and protect this branch, right? So let's protect the branch, and we'll say, hey, every time you have like, if you want to push something on the main branch, we don't want people to accidentally push code directly to the main branch. We want them to at least require a pull request before merging. And ideally you will have number of approvals like one or more, but in this particular case, because I'm just giving a demo, I'm the only person, I will remove this check for require approvals, right? So what I'm going to do is, at least it requires a pull request before merging, so that people don't accidentally push like bad code to the main branch. So let's just create it, and okay, now we have the authentication in place. And just for one more time, let's try to do this exercise again, right? So let me just do a git branch, git checkout main, and let me pull the branch. Okay, and if I click on this class again, everything looks well formatted. And I just want to give one more try and see if everything is working fine or not. So I'll just make some more formatting errors, and I'll say git checkout branch, and it says one last trial to see if all is well, right? And let's go back. Let's add this poorly formatted code. Let's say one last try with bad code. Commit. I'm going to do a git push. I'm going to push this on GitHub. Okay, let's create a pull request. And this is just one last try. You want to see if everything is working fine or not. And let's do a merge pull request. And let's see what happens this time. And it failed, right? The question is why? In the previous pull request, everything was fine. But this time, actually, if you go back and look at our code, the code is still poorly formatted, right? The action failed, so it was not able to format the code. What changed? What changed is, if you remember, there was a message which was coming here that your main branch was not protected, right? And if we come back here, I protected the branch. And now if we come back and look here, the formatting plugin is actually complaining that the main branch is now protected, right? What does it mean? If you remember, guys, when we looked into this workflow file, I told you that this action is doing two things. Number one, so after checking out the project, the number one thing that it does is it basically formats the code, right? That's the first thing that it does. And the second thing that it does, it basically commits the code. So if you look back here, it commits the code because skip commit was by default false. So it tries to commit the code for you and it tries to push that code to the main branch, but you cannot do it anymore because now our main branch is protected. So that brings us to the last question for this particular topic of discussion, and that is, what do you do now? Like, you literally have got two choices. Should you have this plugin which will make sure that your code will always be formatted without you having to do anything, but then you would have to like switch off this rule that you cannot push code directly to the main branch? Or should you protect your main branch and then not make use of this plugin? If you ask me, not having a main branch protected is too big a risk that that I would not take. For me, that is a deal breaker, and for that reason alone, I would not want to have this solution. If that is what is needed for the solution to make it work, I do not want this solution because it is completely non-negotiable for me to not have the main branch protected, right? Because if someone accidentally corrupts the main branch, then the whole project is screwed. Like, all the efforts are gone. And because of that reason, I would not use it. And that brings us to like the conclusion of this video. Like, if you cannot use this solution, what are the other options that you've got? And in the next video, I'll show you, like, if you cannot do formatting on the cloud side, let's say in GitHub, you still have very good ways of doing formatting on the client side or on your local machine side. So in the next video, I'll show you, like, how you can have other mechanisms of properly formatting your code on the client side so that no poorly formatted code ever makes to GitHub, but also you don't have to compromise on, having a main branch not protected. So I hope you found this video interesting. And if you're interested to see, like, how you can achieve client-side formatting, please watch my next video, in which I'm going to share how you can achieve it using pre-commit hooks. So thank you. See you. Cheers. Bye-bye.